Shaq and Hakeem Olajuwon are two of the greatest NBA players to ever grace the court. Shaq was a dominant powerhouse that couldn't be stopped down low, while Hakeem was a master of the post and completely shut it down on defense. And most will say that Shaq is better, but honestly I think it's Hakeem. And in the second episode of my hot take series, I'll present my case as to why Hakeem Olajuwon is better than Shaquille O'Neal. So to start off, let me clear up the difference between being better and greater. Being better means you're a more complete player, more skilled, and are better at producing for your team. Being greater means you impact winning at the highest level, have accomplishments to back it up, and have a legacy that beats your opponent. Now, people don't have a problem with saying that Hakeem's greater, but almost no one acknowledges the fact that he's probably better too. I think in order to fairly make my point, I'm gonna compare them side by side, starting off with their scoring. These two big men are both top 20 all-time in points, with Shaq having the lead of around 2,000 points since he played longer. Shaq was definitely a straight up bully in the paint, posting his way up close enough just to throw the ball in the hoop. In his prime, the Diesel was close to averaging 30 points a game and nobody in the league could guard him one-on-one. He also had a deadly array of post hooks and underrated footwork to be able to use his pivot to get around bodies. In his younger days, Shaq was also extremely quick for his size and could get coast to coast with ease. Even later on in his career, he could post up his opponent, baby them like a 10-year-old boy, dunk it in their face, push them off of him, and then stare them down like a menace. On the other hand, Hakeem was also a great scorer, but he operated with silky footwork and grace instead of pushing his defender in the post like Shaq did in his later days. He had the best footwork ever, especially for a big man, because of how agile and smooth his post moves were. The Dream Shake is one of the most legendary signature moves of all time, and it was a staple of Hakeem's dominance in the 90s.
Turns inside. The Dream Shake! Olajuwon spinning one way, back to the following.
Even modern big men like Dwight Howard and Joel Embiid draw inspiration from the Dream's post arsenal, and he's always a go-to mentor for pros trying to develop their post skills and footwork. These two are both great scorers, but Shaq definitely gets the edge just because of how unstoppable he was physically, and he also was a little more productive in the points per game department. Next, we have defense. It's Hakeem. I'm sorry, defense is arguably the best part of Hakeem's game, with him being a defensive player of the year and the all-time leader in blocks. He's also shockingly top 10 in steals, even though he's a big man. Don't get me wrong, Shaq was a pretty good defender during his prime, but Hakeem isn't just good, he's in consideration for the best defensive player of all time. The Dream was a complete lockdown in the paint, and he averaged 4 blocks multiple times throughout his career. He was also a mobile guy to size, being able to stay with perimeter guys and intercepting passing lanes like Bam Adebayo in today's game. Shaq was a complete opposite, being completely non-existent on the perimeter. But O'Neal was still a great rim protector, getting as high as 3 blocks per game and even making a couple of all-defensive teams. But I mean, you're comparing a very good defender to an all-time great one. So Hakeem proves his dominance by taking the defensive win over Shaq. And now we have rebounding. Both the Diesel and the Dream were great rebounders, each usually snagging 10 boards a game. Hakeem had better rebounding fundamentals and positioning overall, and got above 14 rebounds per game in his prime compared to Shaq, who never did that. So I'm gonna have to give this one to the Dream. And let's get an easy one out of the way, shooting.
Bonding with this love fest that has broken out here at Staples. Oh, man. You can hear that.
It's Hakeem, who actually had a smooth mid-range jumper and fadeaway. Now, Shaq was extremely skilled at post hooks, but outside of 10 feet away from the basket, he was not a shooter. He averaged an awful 52.7% from the free throw line. Teams literally just hacked him because there was a better shot of him missing a free throw than stopping him in the paint. And the opposite of shooting is finishing, which we'll look at next. Starting off with Hakeem, he had the moves to get himself to good positions to finish. He had smooth layups and finger rolls in addition to some throwdowns. Olajuwon definitely had great touch around the rim and the strong hand in case he needed to power through. Meanwhile, Shaq was just... He was an extremely powerful finisher, breaking 3 backboards and throwing grown 7-footers to the floor in his path to the rim. But he also had an underrated touch and bag of moves in the paint. I think they're both great in the paint, but I mean, I would feel guilty if I didn't pick the Diesel for finishing. Next, let's move on to personal accolades. Hakeem is very accomplished personally, having an MVP Defensive Player of the Year and made 12 All-NBA teams, 12 All-Star teams, and 9 All-Defensive teams. When MJ retired for the first time, Hakeem completely dominated the league in his absence. His Rockets were the only ones to win a ring in that period, completely dogging every other superstar big man in the NBA. Hakeem embarrassed Karl Malone, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, and even Shaq on the Magic. But don't sleep on the Diesel's achievements, cause he's an MVP, Rookie of the Year, 14-time All-NBA member, 15-time All-Star, and 3-time All-Defense. Shaq arguably had the best MVP season of all time in 2000 and honestly should have been the first unanimous MVP in NBA history. His prime is also top 5 all time in my opinion because he was just unstoppable and was close to averaging 40 a game in the 2000 finals. These two both played in the toughest era of big men the league has ever seen, and Hakeem was able to be the alpha to rise above all others. And remember, we're just counting personal achievements since we're seeing who's better, so rings and those stuff don't play a matter. And just based on pure achievements, I think it's very close, but I'm gonna have to give this one to Shaq slightly. Now, overall, Shaq is dominance and Hakeem is mastery. They're both legendary greats in their own rights, and it's definitely not like they're that far apart in skill. But as I said, Hakeem is honestly a better player because he bested the Diesel himself and was more complete overall and was more impactful to winning with way less support. Shaq had the likes of Kobe, D. Wade, and Penny Hardaway in his prime to help him, while Hakeem had a good Ralph Sampson for 2 years and an out-of-prime Clyde Drexler. So Hakeem for me has gotta be better than Shaq. But in terms of greatness, there might be a different answer depending on who you ask. If you want to see where these two big men rank all time, check this video above, and as always, see you next time.